It's time for the Comic Bin Comic Book Podcast. The podcast you look forward to for all of your news and reviews of the best comic books hitting stands. Whether it's DC,
Batman, Wonder Woman,
Marvel,
Spider-Man,
Image,
Spawn, Saga,
Boom,
Once and Future, Power Rangers,
or whatever book or publisher you follow.
we cover them all here.
This is the place for you.
That's right, it's for everyone.
This is the Comic Bin Comic Book Podcast.
Let's get it.
Hello, folks, and welcome to another episode of the Comic Bin Comic Book Podcast. I am your host, Theo, and sorry I missed out on last week. Some stuff at work really took my time away, so I wasn't able to record like I normally do. However, I am back, and we're looking at some titles that dropped in this past week. Got 5 books that we're going to cover for you this time around. First up, we're going to be looking at Action Comics number 1067 with a main story from Gail Simone and Eddie Barrows with a backup by Rainbow Rowell and Theon Torme over at DC. And then staying at DC, we're also going to look at Batman and Robin number 11 from writer Joshua Williamson with art this time from Juan Ferreira. And then we're going to move on over to the folks at Ghost Machine and Image, and we're going to look at Geiger number 4 from Jeff Johns and Gary Frank. And then we're going to move over to Marvel, and we're going to look at the second issue of The Ultimates number 2 from writer Dennis Camp with art from Ron Frigeri. And then finally, we're going to go right on back to Image, and we're going to look at The Domain number 1 from writer Chip Zdarsky with art from Rachel Stott. That is my book of the week, and in fact, if I was able to record last week, its sister title, Public Domain number 6, would have been my book of the week as well. But yes, so we're going to take a look at those 5 titles, and I have some honorable mentions that I'll touch upon after that. So let's go on and get into some quick news, and then we'll get into our reviews. So from the news standpoint, we are only a few weeks away from San Diego Comic-Con, and of course we'll be covering the event this year for both the Comic Book Spot as well as the Batman universe. But what's going on is we see a lot of the publishers are starting to drop their schedules for the week. So DC has put out their schedule of panels and events for San Diego. Boom has put out theirs as well. A few of the other publishers like Titan and Oni has also put out their schedules for the week, but there isn't much news with regards to new things happening from the publishers. Again, that is probably intentional considering, again, we're only a few weeks away. I would imagine that as we get closer, we may start seeing some things leak out, but may not be official until San Diego. But yeah, it's been quiet from the news front other than the schedules that are coming out, which I am happy to see because it kind of helps me plan out how I am going to be spending my 4 days in San Diego covering the event. But that's pretty much it. And with that being said, let's go on and get into our reviews. First up is Action Comics number 1067 from writer Gail Simone with art by Eddie Barrows over at DC. And so this is a 3-story arc that is under the premise of Superman superstars. And I am assuming that while absolute power is going on, Superman itself, the main Superman title it's going to have all of the absolute power tie-ins, whereas Action seems to be going in a different direction. So Gail is going to be doing this 3-story arc for Action Comics and this main story, and it's really it's a different look at Clark and the entire world of Metropolis. I almost feel like I'm reading a George Reeves or watching a George Reeves Superman story when you see how Eddie Barrows draws Clark. He has the cape that hangs off of his shoulder, much like it was when George Reeves played the role. I really enjoy that. And the story really kind of takes that look as well. It's set back in time. They're dressed like they're in the 60s, 70s, and it's just a great feel, despite the story that's going on, which sees an alien race that comes to invade the planet, and Clark has to face the champion of this alien race in order to save Earth. But it's just a great feel of a story, and I like that they brought in some other characters from the world of DC Comics. So they had some members of the Justice League. You had Jefferson Pierce, aka Black Lightning, who was there. It was just a really good story. Superman does what Superman does. He wins the fight. He beats the alien champion. But the story ends with the race basically saying, okay, well, time's up, and this big carrier that they are on, in which Superman had this fight, begins to fall to the ground. And Jimmy and Lois are there, and they're looking for help, and Clark is kind of in a conundrum because he doesn't know what to do with regards to either saving his friends or saving Metropolis, as this huge aircraft carrier is falling to the ground. And so that's how part one ends. Again, it was a great story. I love the art. It really gave me an old style feel. Can't wait to see how it continues on as we get into 1068. The colors from Danny Mickey were impeccable. I absolutely love that in the main story as well. But then we get to the backup story, and the backup story again is written by Rainbow Rowell, who is of course a favorite of mine for her work over at Sensational She-Hulk, and art from Sion Tomei. And this one really takes a different look at Lois. At least that's where it seems to be going by the time the story ends, where she is really settling into her role as editor-in-chief now at the Daily Planet. And it comes to a head because Clark goes out, he has this battle with Atomic Skull, and he comes back to write up the story about this battle between Superman and Atomic Skull, and Lois says he can't do it. She's given the story to someone else, and that really takes Clark aback because he's done this before. Perry has allowed him to do this, but Lois settling into her role as editor-in-chief, mainly at the push of Clark, who is telling her, hey, don't be Perry. Don't try to be Perry. Be Lois Lane, editor-in-chief. And so she takes the story from Clark, citing a conflict of interest, and she gives it to an intern who she hires full time. And she basically says, hey, I'm not Perry. I'm Lois Lane. And so we will see how those two will settle, not necessarily a beef, but just settle that tension. And I think I have all the faith in the world that Rainbow Rowell will write this story the way I know she can, considering how she handled the relationship between She-Hulk and Jack of Hearts in that series. So it was really, really, really a really good story. The art in the backup was not as good as the art from Eddie Barrows, but I wasn't expecting that. But it was really good as well. I really appreciate the way that Sion Tomei drew primarily Lois. Had a slight different look than we've seen from other artists, and I appreciate that. Wasn't what I was expected, but again, it was something it was something I appreciated just from the standpoint that she had a little bit of a different look. I can't put my finger on it, but I enjoyed the art. Again, I thought Eddie's was much better, but again, it was still good. The colors from Romero Fajardo was okay. It was really bright, really vivid, considering and I really enjoyed the way that he colored Atomic Skull in that battle between he and Superman. But can't wait to see what happens in part 2 of both of these stories, from both Rainbow and from Gail Simone, and we'll see where things go as we move on through Superman Superstars, that 3-arc event that will cover Action Comics while Absolute Power is going on. So again, that is Action Comics number 1067 from writers Gail Simone, Rainbow Ryle, with art from Eddie Barrows and Sion Tomei over at DC Comics. Okay, we stay at DC Comics, and next up we have Batman and Robin number 11, written by Joshua Williamson, with art by Juan Ferreira. This continues what I'm going to call probably the greatest arc, hopefully, in Batman and Robin, considering it has the return of Maya Ducard. As you all remember, the last time I reviewed this, I gushed over how happy I was seeing her back. But with this story, it also continues the move to Dinosaur Island after Damian and Bruce are told that Bane is still alive. And this story, and from what I would imagine, this entire arc is going to be about a struggle for Damian as the one thing that continues to haunt him in his growth as Robin, but also in his growth just as a child, is the fact that he witnessed the death of Alfred, and he witnessed Bane kill Alfred right there in front of his eyes. And so you get that almost immediately. This was a really quick read to get through. I mean, before I knew it, I was at the end. And because there's not much that is going on. You get there, Bruce and Damian arrives. Maya is already on the island. She's waiting on them. And I love that interaction between her and Damian as soon as they get there, where she basically attacks him, and Bruce is like, well, what the hell? And, she's like, well, that's just how we greet each other. And it reminds Bruce that, that's how her grandfather trained him as well when he was training him to be Batman. He trained him to greet people by punching them in their face. So that was a little funny, but it gets to the end really quick, because once they get out in the open and they see what's going on, they see that the Cobra cult is there, and they're basically trying to kidnap the dinosaurs from Dinosaur Island. And Bane just comes full force in attacking them. And he's not doing it from the standpoint of trying to protect the dinosaurs. He basically sees Dinosaur Island as his. And the cult are basically, they're trespassing on something he considers his own, and Maya makes it clear that Bane doesn't care about the dinosaurs, and you can see that in the beginning of the issue when Bane is having it out with this T-Rex, and he basically kicks his jaw out, and just the way that battle is depicted when you see the jaw just dropped to the ground, and this dinosaur is now dying, and blood's everywhere. It's just gruesome. So it leads credence to what Maya is saying with regards to Bane not really caring about the safety of the dinosaurs, but he's just protecting what he considers his territory. But again, just moving very quickly, the struggle now becomes, as this is going on, Damien is thinking back, and he's hearing Alfred in his head talking about, the point as he's about to get killed, where he is begging Bane to not do this in front of Damien, and he does it anyway. And this rage that hasn't been seen in quite a while builds up within Damien. Again, this is the one thing that he's still has not forgiven himself of. And, that's despite Bruce talking to him and forgiving him and telling him, hey, it wasn't your fault, it was mine. All of this going on, Damien still has that rage and sadness because despite Bruce taking the blame, he wasn't there. It was Damien that had to witness the death of the man that, helped raise him along with his father. So before you know it, Damien is going after Bane. He is looking to take him out. And Bruce attempts to stop him, but before he can get to Bane, or before he can get to Damien, he's grabbed from behind. And we find out that Bruce isn't the only one with his child in tow, but we find that Vengeance, Bane's daughter, is on the island as well, and the way she grabs Batman by the back of his neck and just lifts him up with one hand is just awesome to see that sheer power that's within her. But that's how the issue ends, with Vengeance going after and grabbing Bruce. And we don't know how far Damien has gone, but you can tell it's going to be a story as we get into these final issues of Joshua Williamson's run. We only have 2 left, issue 12 and issue 13. So we'll see how that plays out in these last 2 issues. The art from Juan Ferreira is not my favorite. It's not bad. There are certain parts of it that just gives me Howard Porter vibes. And for you all who follow me, especially on the TBU Comic Podcast, you all know that I am the least favorite Howard Porter fan. I am basically not a fan of his at all. And there were just some touches of Howard Porter in the art, and I don't know if it was due to the colors or the line work or what, but it just didn't sit quite well with me. Of the 3 artists that have kind of been the main artists on this series, including Ferrara, and that would be Simone de Mayo and also Shishmilia. Of course, this would be my least favorite. Again, it's not bad, but it's a little bit too close to Howard Porter for my satisfaction. The colors, again, just okay, but I was kind of turned off from the line work to really appreciate it as much as I should have. But again, it didn't steal away from how good the story was. The story continues to be great. Actually, this was a really good one, seeing this struggle build up in Damien once again as he deals with the death of Alfred in his head, and he now finds the man responsible right there in his sights, and we now see how he acts on that rage that has been held up inside of him. But again, I will be following this to the end. It has been my best and my favorite Batman book out there of the three main Batman titles, with Batman and Detective Comics. And I got 2 more issues to enjoy before a new creative team takes over. And I'm assuming we will find out who that new creative team will be at San Diego, unless it's leaked out a little bit early. But again, that is Batman and Robin number 11, written by Joshua Williamson with art by Juan Ferreira over at DC Comics. Okay, let's hop on over to Image Comics and the folks over at Ghost Machine with Geiger number 4, written by Jeff Johns with art by Gary Frank. Colors, of course, come from Brad Anderson. So if you're following the series, at the end of issue 3, we found that Barney, the 2-headed dog that has been with Geiger from the start, has been kidnapped by the electrician who has been tracking down the nuclear man. And, Barney was kidnapped because he initially was following Nate, the nuclear knight, as Nate attempted to trek out while Geiger was asleep to find some of the books that he had mistakenly destroyed. But while following Nate, he gets distracted by some meat, and that's how the electrician was able to kidnap him. So the story picks up in issue 4. Again, Barney's gone. They're now trying to track him down. And what Geiger realizes that in order to find Barney, the electrician has basically set a trap. He's given a note with a small map that kind of shows where they need to go. And where they need to go takes them right back through the airport, the one place where Geiger said they should not be going because of the organ people that had infiltrated and were housed there. And if you can remember, those were the individuals that basically kidnapped, killed people, took their organs, cannibalized some of them, but took their organs to kind of heal themselves. And just gruesome stuff. But no matter what, they had to go through the airport hangar in order to get to where the electrician and Barney were. So Geiger gets there first, tells Nate, hey, once I go in, you look for another way to get to where we need to go, and I'll handle everything that's going on in this hangar. And so he basically gets into the hangar and he calls everyone out. He gets there and he's in his nuclear form. He calls the organ people out and they attack him. And during all this, Nate comes in, and instead of finding a way out, he comes and he helps Geiger, which is a good thing, because Geiger was getting inundated by all the organ people that were attacking him. And as they are fighting, they find out that there's this mother and her child who are held hostage that's actually about to get killed. And Geiger goes in and saves them. But as Geiger's helping out this mother and her child, he drops one of Geiger's books that he has found for him. And instead of letting the organ people take that book, he kind of builds up the courage to start fighting, and he pulls out his sword and he starts handling his business, which for Nate is a lot, considering I consider him more of an albatross and a burden to Geiger than anything else. But they are able to take care of business with the organ people. He being Geiger, gives this mother the keys to this vehicle, tells her where to go to find safety. But there was a touching piece right before they left where Nate gives the little girl a copy of The Velveteen Rabbit. And if you can remember, in issue 3, that was his favorite book. He remembers it as a book that was read to him. And he gives it to the little girl, who recognizes the title. But they find a way to where the map says they need to go. And it's at this, I want to say, a hot dog factory where hot dogs are made. But they get there, they find the electrician, and again, there's a trap that was set. And he basically electrifies the floor, shocks them. But as he does this, there's like the smoke bomb that goes off. And the smoke bomb has an element in it that dampens not only the rods that powers up Geiger, but it dampens his skin too. So his typical powers aren't there. And with that, the electrician shoots Geiger, and the issue ends with just one panel, center panel, Geiger laying on the floor, bleeding out. And so we shall see what happens next. I don't know, and I'm kind of anxious what happens in issue 5, considering that next page where they talk about what's going on in issue 5 shows Geiger holding Barney, who appears to be dead. And I really hope that that's not the case, because I like the idea of Barney, Barney being a two-headed dog, but as a two-headed dog has dual personalities with how he acts, but it's still a dog at heart. He loves Barney. He has taken a liking to Nate, who I am not a fan of, and I hope that this isn't the end of Barney, based on that preview of the cover for issue number 5. But we'll see how that goes. And then art-wise, what else can you say about artwork from Gary Frank and Brad Anderson? Those two are just a dynamic duo in whatever they team up on. Great line work, great colors. It's just those two as a pairing are just perfect. They're just a great duo from an artistic standpoint. So at some point, all of these stories in Ghost Machine, whether it's Redcoats, whether it's Rook Exodus, it's all supposed to come together at some point when you look at this timeline that leads to Geiger at some point. I don't know. I haven't picked up all of the pieces as far as where they tie up yet, but I'm also behind on some of my readings as well. So I have started Rook Exodus already. I have not started on Redcoats yet, but a friend of mine who is reading it has said that it's really good as well. So I really want to see if I can pick up and see where things tie together, considering the events happen, all of the events happen at different points in time on this Ghost Machine timeline that they show in every issue. So we will see how it goes. But again, Geiger itself continues to be a good story, just as in volume 1 of the series. It is something that could really stand on its own. I am hoping that we see Junkyard Joe again. I know we got a hint of it in last issue, and I thought that they were going to follow up with it. after there was that brief period, but it did not happen in issue number 4. So we'll see if he pops up at some point in issue number 5 or beyond. But we shall see. I'm hoping that he does. But again, that is Geiger number 4, written by Jeff Johns with art from Gary Frank over at Ghost Machine and Image Comics. So now we move on over to Marvel Comics and we take a look at The Ultimates number 2, written by Dennis Camp with art by Juan Frigeri. So we remember at the end of issue 1, Iron Lad is able to reawaken the powers in Ant-Man or Giant Man and the Wasp. So we now have a bigger team of Ultimates that are out there, and their next trek is over to Washington DC and to the White House, where they are going after the president, who happens to be a new character, it seems, by the name of Midas, with the power of turning things that he touches into gold. And this battle goes on while Midas is talking to Steve and to Tony about not only how he came to power, but how he views the world and how things appear to be. And it's based on just money and everything he has and everything he does is based on money. And as this battle is going on, he's telling them, hey, you can try to take me down and you can, destroy what I'm building here. But just know if you do so, that it's going to affect everyone here, because the power grid is based on this thing that I have in the basement. So while this is going on, though, and I think this is probably more important, because while this is going on, there are flashbacks throughout the issue where Tony has basically built this 360 holographic historical archive for Steve to kind of give him an idea of everything that he has missed while he was frozen in ice. And so while the main story is going on, we get splash pages throughout of Steve watching the events in the Ultimate Marvel universe of things happening and how the maker influenced a lot of things. So we see where at one point in the 616 universe, you remember when Galactor arrived, it was the Fantastic Four that went out and, confronted Galactus. But in this history, based on what they have now, it's not the Fantastic Four or the Silver Surfer that stops Galactus. It's the Maker who's shown as doing this. And you see just all of these things going on that is quite different from what we see in our world, being 616. And it really sets forth how Steve interacts with Midas and Tony as they are in the Oval Office. But eventually, Ant-Man and the Wasp, they take care of business elsewhere in the White House, which is actually plated in gold now because of Midas. But they go battle things out, and they find themselves in this basement. And again, Midas says, hey, you can take this down, but just know if you do so, it's going to not just affect what's going on here, it's going to take down the power grid across the area, and it's going to affect so many people that you say you care about. But they go ahead, they take out Midas, they take out this generator, And in doing so, they realize that they have freed someone from this generator. And it turns out that it's America Chavez. And we remember, if you remember her power to cross dimensions. But this is not the America Chavez that we are used to. This is, again, the Ultimate Universe who finds her, and they're able to get out with America as the Gold House, White House burns. So again, it was really a quick, really fast-paced story, but the touching parts for me was seeing the history through the eyes of what Steve was seeing and how it affected him as they got into this battle with Midas and the agents within the White House, and how it guided his decision to make the sacrifice to save America. So we will see how that all plays out, whether or not America joins the team or not. We do know that as we get further along, we are going to be getting even more folks coming aboard. So in issue 3, we know that they are going to find some gamma radiated beings, including the Ultimate Universe's She-Hulk. So we will see how that plays out. Now, the art, really good. I really enjoy the art from Figueroa, as well as the colors from Federico Blee, and the goal throughout the issue, whether you're looking at Midas or parts of the White House, was as close to go with a comic book that you could probably see, and I really enjoyed that. But despite that, even in these panels where there are blasts going on or explosions going on, you never got the red, white, and blue on Steve just always shone through, and just great just seeing that. And the way that Frigeri handles his motion and action is really good. You don't always have to see every frame of motion to know what's going on, and he does a good job of showing that, especially as Steve and Midas battle it out. But a really good story. I'm enjoying it thus far. I'm excited to see how they handle the Ultimate Universe's She-Hulk in issue 3, and we will go from there. I'm excited to see how different this Jen Walters might be. But once again, that is the Ultimates number 2 from writer Dennis Camp, artist Juan Frigeri, over at Marvel Comics. Okay, so we now get to my book of the week, The Domain number 1, written by Chip Zdarsky with art by Rachel Stott and colors by Enrica Erin, I'm hoping I'm saying this last name right, Angiolini, over at Image Comics. Now, I can't talk about The Domain without first talking about Public Domain number 6, and this is why I'm upset I wasn't able to record last week, because Public Domain was my book of the week last week as well. But I can't talk about what goes on in the Domain without talking about Public Domain first. So let me just do that real quickly. So after a hiatus, Public Domain returned last week with issue number 6. And if you can remember how issue number 5 ended, the Dallas family, Sid and his boys, were able to regain creative control of the Domain franchise, at least from a comic book standpoint. The movie franchise stayed where it was, but they got the property, They're now ready to start their comic book series all over again. And what we find in issue number 6 is that there is somewhat of a struggle going on. Sid, being old school dad, wants his franchise that he helped create to continue as it is, with a single member, male, white male. But the boys and Tanya is the assistant that used to work for Sid's former partner, Jerry. But they are of a different take. They think it's time to modernize the idea of what the domain is. And Sid's not crazy about that idea. Again, he wants to just pick up where things left off and continue the world that he and Jerry created and just move it along. And the kids they're not really aboard with that. And so Sid goes out and he is able to talk his old editor into rejoining the new comics company, Dallas Comics. And they are ready to move things forward. He's able to get her from under Jerry because Jerry was trying to do the same thing. He feels that Jerry feels that the folks at Signature are really trying to undermine him with bringing in other people to give insight and advice into how he should be doing things. And so, they both are kind of struggling, but Sid's able to win out. And as the issue ends in public domain number 6, we see that they are laying the foundation of the characters that we will see in this new world of the domain. And these new characters, as you see on this page, are the characters that appear in my book of the week this week, which is the domain number 1. So first things first, I love the cover from Rachel Stott and how it's put together, because it shows the new characters and it's really depicted as if this is something from Dallas Comics. And if you look at it, they have the Dallas family as the creators, and it's crossed out, of course, when Chip Zdarsky and Rachel Stotts and that creative team's name above it. But I just think that idea is awesome. So while public domain will focus on this tension of what's going on and how the kids are now moving Sid along in this new direction of this new world of the domain with these 3 new characters, we now see that story in front of us from Zdarsky and from Stott. So great story as we get things to kick off. And so now let's go ahead and see how things work out in the domain number 1. Again, written by Miles Dallas, Tanya Cole, with art by Sid Dallas over at Dallas Comics. So the domain is really an origin story, which I would imagine is the appropriate thing to do, considering this is a new world. This is a new take on the classic hero, and even the trademark of the cover says so. The classic hero like you've never seen before. And we see how this comes into play as, we're introduced to 3 friends. They've been best friends since high school. One goes off to college. The other 2 just move on in life. One goes and works with her dad. The other just does his thing and looking into the stars and living life free. And yet throughout all of this and these 3 paths that they have taken, they remain best friends. But one of the things that continue to make them friends is their love of the stars and astronomy, and, looking for things that are out of the ordinary in the world of astronomy. And in doing so, they find that there's a meteor, or at least a meteorite, that is on track to crash somewhere near them. And so they set out to find it, pick it up, study it, do whatever. But what they find, however, isn't a rock. They find a ship that has crash landed on Earth. And there are 2 aliens in it. One dead, one's alive. But they wear this gauntlets that gives immense power. And ironically, the way the story is written, even though there are multiple gauntlets, the power can only be used one at a time. So if all 3 are wearing a gauntlet, only one of them can activate the power. And each of them seems to have a different ability once it's enacted. So it's great, just seeing how they trade off back and forth with gaining particular power. And as they go to explore things, one of the aliens have died, the other one is still alive. They take that one, and they take him in order to keep him safe, because they know the government is coming. And they get out of there, and sure enough, the government is tracking this thing as well. And they realize, hey, something just crash landed, we need to cordon it off, and we need to go and see what's there. But little do our Earth friends know that that ship is also being tracked from the stars. And some aliens pick up on it and figure out, hey, we now know where the ship is. Let's go and catch up and catch it, and let's plunder the planet while we're at it. So get real quick read as we are introduced to the main characters of the story. Again, 3 best friends, Liz, Max, and Destiny. Just 3 great friends, longtime friends, going all the way back to high school. And I just love the relationship between those 3, just being able to chill and talk about whatever. But great story. Can't wait to see what happens in issue 2. But I really enjoy how Zdarsky goes and presents this story to give us the other side of what's going on in the Dallas family with creating this new world of the domain. Now, the art from Rachel Stott is absolutely beautiful. It is, and it's far different from what we see in public domain, because in public domain, Zdarsky does the writing and the art. But this art is beautiful. I sometimes see a little bit of Gary Franks in it. It's just really, really good. It gives it almost a little bit of a realistic take, if not for the colors, which are really good as well. And you could just see, she takes real good care of her line work and putting the panels together. And then again, the colors on top of it is really, really bright and vivid and dark where it needs to be as they travel out to find the spaceship at night. But it's just a wonderful story that it comes with some great art, and I am definitely on board to continue reading this and public domain. So when I ordered the pull list, I really struggled with which cover that I wanted for the series. So Rachel Stott does the main cover, but the colorist, Enrica, she does the variant covers, and so she does the variant cover for issue 1 and issue number 2 for when it comes out. And the variant covers, it kind of is like I guess you want to say it looks like a magic trading card where it gives each character in sort of this battle uniform, and it gives their strengths and abilities. It looks really nice. I really like the way it's put together, and the colors is quite different. It's even more realistic when you look at the colors for the variant covers. So I was really torn on which of the covers that I was going to pick up. I ended up going with the main cover for issue 1 and issue 2, but that's not to say the variant covers aren't wonderful. They're really good. I think you would enjoy going either option. But again, this is my book of the week. Absolutely loved it. Can't wait to see what's next, not only in public domain, but also in the domain. And again, that is The Domain #1, written by the Dallas family, ghostwriting for Chip Zdarsky with art by Rachel Stott over at Image Comics. So before closing out, let me just give some honorable mentions that I enjoyed over the week as well. First up, Profane #2 over at Boom Studios from Peter Milligan and Raul Fernandez. It's still a decent story. If there's one thing I am struggling with is the idea of them throwing magic into the story as well. I like the idea of Will Profane being a detective and trying to solve his own mystery, being that he is the character of the book, and he's trying to find out who basically killed his creator. But I am not sure how and why the notion or the need of magic within the story needs to be there. That's about it, but still enjoying the story. Definitely enjoy the art from Raul Fernandez. So again, if you're not reading Profane, I strongly suggest you go ahead and pick that up. Next up is X-Men #1 over at Marvel from Jed MacKay and Ryan Stegman. Again, this introduced the new X-Men team led by Cyclops, but includes Juggernaut, Kid Omega, Magic, Cyclops, and Timber. So art is great from Ryan Stegman. I really enjoyed that. It took me a few minutes to really get into the story from Jed MacKay, but I slowly came around to it, really enjoyed it. I will continue picking that up and reading that as well. Also out this past week, Gun Honey Collision Course #3 from Charles Adai and Ang Hung King, or Ching, I can't pronounce that last name, over at Titan Comics. Again, not a book for the kids, but it's still a great story with this crime noir following the adventures of Joanna Tan. This is the penultimate issue. Got one more to go of this third volume or fourth volume if you include the Heat Seeker series that was a part of the Gun Honey world. But that's out as well. If you haven't picked that up, please do so. Transformers #10 from Daniel Warren Johnson and Jorge Corona. I continue to enjoy, for some reason, I continue to enjoy Corona's art on this series compared to anything else I've seen him on, seeing that I have not been too much of a fan of his. But I love the focus that they gave on Beachcomber as he has traveled through time to get to where we are now, and the end point with Cybertron making, Shockwave bringing Cybertron into the solar system and to draw the world's energy into Cybertron in order to revitalize it. So we will see how that goes. Again, That's the folks over there at Skybound Image and the Energy Universe. The best thing going in comics right now, in my opinion. Then over at Mad Cave, we have a new miniseries spinning out of the main Gatchaman storyline, and this is Gatchaman Galactor #1, written by Steve Orlando with art by Catherine Lobo. Again, I am following all three of these series, the main series from Cullen Bunn, as well as the Ken series, and this one as it reintroduced the world of Gatchaman and the Science Ninja team to today's comic reader. So pick that up if you're not reading that one either. And then finally, Moon Man #3 from Kyle Higgins, Scott Mescudi or Kid Cudi, and art from Marco Licati over at Image Comics. Again, that is also a good series that I've been enjoying. So just some honorable mentions for other books that I've read that you should be picking up and reading as well. It was just a great week of comics, just a bunch of stuff out there that I really enjoyed, and I can't wait to see what's in store for next week. So that is going to do it for this episode of the Comic Bin Comic Book Podcast. Next time, we just have another solid week of comics. I'm hoping to look at Superman #16 from Joshua Williamson and Jamal Campbell. It's great seeing Jamal Campbell back doing the interior art for Superman. He started it out when Joshua Williamson first jumped on Superman with Superman #1. Then I'm going to look at Wonder Woman #11 from Tom King and Tony Daniel. It's a tie-in to Absolute Power, so I don't know if I will truly enjoy it. I know I will enjoy the Trinity story in the back with regards to her hanging out with Damian and John, so we'll see what that story is about. We'll probably cover Destro #2 from Dan Waters with art from Andre Bresson over at Skybound Image in the Energy Universe. Then we have a new #1 coming out from Marvel, and with the From the Ashes event coming out of the Fall of X storyline with the X-Men, with Phoenix #1 with story by Stephanie Phillips with art from Alessandro Baracolo over again at Marvel Comics. Then I don't know about Dark Knights of Steel All Winter #1 from Tom Taylor with art by Terso Khans, and I think he has a co-writer with that. I believe that's Jake Kristoff, but I don't know if I'm going to follow it or not. This one is going to focus on Deathstroke. I'm going to read it again and see if I really want to cover it on the cast next week. But also coming out of Dynamite, we have Thundercats #6, written by Declan Shelby with art from Drew Moss. Then Rat City over at Image Comics from Erica Schultz with art from Zay Carlos, the 4th issue in that series spinning off from the Spawn universe. Then Witchblade is back. So over at Top Cow Image, we have Witchblade #1, written by Marguerite Bennett with art by Giuseppe Cafaro. And so I read that already. I really enjoyed the first issue. If I have the time, I will go ahead and cover it. And then I am torn about this from the standpoint, Star Trek, the 2024 annual, from Jackson Lansing, Colin Kelly, and Rachel Stott over at IDW Publishing. I've said a few times how I felt that Defiant was probably the best of the 2 Star Trek series that's ongoing. Now, anytime a Strange New Worlds miniseries come out, it seems to overshadow both of those titles. But Defiant is to me the strongest of the ongoing series. However, the annual the 2024 annual for Star Trek is really good. And I find that troubling because also out next week is Star Trek number 22, which is also written by Jackson Lanzing and Colin Kelly. And I just could not get it. I could not follow along. And the only thing that I can point to, and I know I've said this before, is my sheer dislike of Benjamin Sisko, and that has been my thing going back to Deep Space Nine. It's not just a comic book thing, and I know people will at me for saying it, but I am not a fan of the Sisko. Never have, and I don't think I never will be. And I think that just turns me off as I read the regular Star Trek series. The annual doesn't have any mention of Sisko. It focuses on Data and Data's relationship with Lore, and it includes Chief O'Brien and Jordan LaForge. And I really enjoyed it. But when I picked up issue 22 of Star Trek, I couldn't do it. I couldn't even finish it. And I can only point to the fact that I have a true dislike of Benjamin Sisko, and I don't know why, and I can't get over it. But maybe I'll talk about it a little bit more next week if I do cover the annual. And then finally, Misery number 2 over at Image Comics from writer Todd McFarlane with art by Szymon Kudranski. And so again, that focuses on Misery, Cyan Fitzgerald, and how her power is manifesting itself even more so in the Spawn universe. So that will be issue 2 of the 4-part miniseries. But again, we've got another good week of comics this week, and it looks like we have another good week of comics next week. And as we get closer to San Diego Comic-Con, I'm just excited about where things are in comics and in the industry. That is going to do it for this episode of the Comic Bin Comic Book Podcast. I'd like to thank you all for your continued support of the program. The Comic Bin Podcast, as well as the Comic Book Spot, are a part of the Comic Book Source family of sites and media. You can follow the podcast on Twitter X at comic_bin, or my personal account at BatmanFan_4life. You can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, Blue Sky, and Threads. We're all over social media. You can also follow our sister site over at thebatmanuniverse.net for all of your news and reviews in the world of Batman. Tune in next time as we give you more in the world of comic books. Again, we truly appreciate your support. But until we meet again next time, keep reading those comics.